An Irish cousin recycles a range of by now familiar Gothic tropes, an isolated transgressors driven by class pride and personal greed, a decaying big house, and the mysterious death of the big house's legitimate heir. Within this cauldron of ascendancy guilt, Somerville and Rose develop a recurring theme in late 19th century big house fiction, a narrative distaste before misalliance, specifically viewed as racial miscegenation between Catholic and Protestant Ireland, just as the degeneracy of Le Fanu's Silas Ruthven became manifest in his marriage to an Irish barmaid and his fathering of the base son, so in An Irish Cousin, the landlord's youthful affair with an Irish servant endangers criminality and madness. Such dark readings of the native Irish woman's contribution to ascendancy decay reflect a growing obsession with pure bloodlines in horses and dogs as well as in the inhabitants of the big house, when power and privilege are receding. Lever and Le Fanu had earlier replaced the national tales allegorized versions of marital union between aristocratic Gaelic and English cultures, with a horror before the boorish, for example, native Irish, suitor of the big house woman. As the native Bulgarian gazes longingly at the gentry estate, the defensive response of its occupants invokes ethnic and sectarian overtones. Thus, colonial and post-colonial Irish fiction adds a specifically racial dimension to the familiar class narrative of the English novel. Somerville and Rose, the real Charlotte, exists for critics as that rare Irish novel aspiring to be a totalizing work of social realism, on occasion compared to George Eliot's Middlemarch. It dissects the insatiable class ambition, constituting the thematic focus of much 19th century European and English fiction, but always with an acute sense of the political shifts occurring within the provincial Anglo-Irish society. In one of its many plot strands, the real Charlotte casts a devastatingly comic eye on a rural big house fading into ineffectual torpor. Although the novel's middle-class protagonist, Charlotte Mullen, attains status by rapaciously acquiring property from those descending the social ladder, Charlotte's ambitions to marry her young cousin into local big house society are decisively thwarted. In the real Charlotte, Somerville and Rose anatomize not criminal culpability or Gothic excesses in the big house as they do in An Irish Cousin, but rather effeteness and depletion of will that increasingly characterize ascendancy progeny in 20th century fiction. Thus, Charlotte's cousin, a vital but impoverished young Dublin ingenue, whose unscrewed energy might have revitalized an aristocratic house and its descendants, is doomed instead to disastrous romantic choices and catastrophic death. Francie Fitzgerald's fate is endangered not just by her own daughterly romantic fantasies, but her suitor Christopher Dysart's effect, decency, and self-conscious intellectual circumspection. In short, by a pervasive failure of sexual energy and purpose characterizing the diffident big house male. Still writing as Somerville and Rose after her collaborator's death, Edith Somerville published Mount Music, The Big House of Inver, novels that expose the resolutely Philistine life of the landed gentry, even as W. B. Yeats was elegizing the beleaguered big house as a squandered source of national vitality and high culture, celebrating and simultaneously undermining the achievements of ascendancy culture. The Big House of Inver conflates that culture's defeat with a violence and moral shoddiness already inherent in its 18th century aesthetic flowering. The history of the Predenville family, whose motto, Je prends, flaunts an acquisitive colonial presence in Ireland. Warren's reading The Big House of the Inver as a castle recreant interpreted against the authorial grain. The landlord's greeds, recruiting, womanizing, and drunken roistering, the very behavior that Edgeworth prefaced to Castle Recreant, relegated to the bad old times before the Union, now anticipates the continuing disorder of Somerville's improvident 19th century Predenvilles, moreover. The Big House of Inver suggests the malevolence of such history through recognizably Gothic flourishes. The ghostly animation of ancient family portraits in a ruined house signals how ancestral arrogance dooms the living. The civilization that the 18th century prevalence bring to the west of Ireland is characterized not only by extraordinary physical beauty of houses, paintings, horses, and young men, but also by insolent pride, hedonism, and shiftless improvidence. Evet arkadaşlar, bugünkü dersimiz bu kadar. Şimdi gelecek hafta konu olarak Bowen, Keane ve Johnston'a bir bakınız. Öbür taraftan bu hafta artık bitiyor. Vize ödevlerinizi de zamanında bana lütfen yollayınız. Evden çıkmayın. Derslerinize dört elle sarılın. Sizlere iyi bir hafta ve hafta sonu diliyorum. Gelecek hafta görüşmek üzere inşallah. Hoşça kalınız.